Hi, this is John with VersaFeed.com. Today we're going to be looking at a new feature within our dashboard called Product Exclusions, and this is how you remove items from your data feeds that you do not want to list. Okay, so here we are at the VersaFeed.com homepage. We're going to click up in the top right under Client Login. If you don't have a login for your account, you can contact your VersaFeed account manager, or you can always email us at info@versafeed.com. So let's go ahead and log in. So for this demo account, I've created about 40 different products. They're all shoes. There's two different brands, Nike and Reebok, and then various different styles, sandals, boots, running shoes, etc., etc. So the first thing we're going to do now is actually visit the exclusion area. So we're going to click product data over here on the left side, and then we're going to click feed exclusions. Okay, so here we are. As you can see, there's not a whole lot going on, and that's because we haven't made any exclusions yet. So let's go ahead and start that process. The first question is always, well, why would we want to exclude products? There's a lot of reasons. If something isn't performing well, you might want to remove it. If you have items that are out of stock on your site, but you haven't actually tagged them as out of stock for whatever reason, you might want them removed so you're not paying for those clicks. And then another very common one is if you have products that are against the terms of service for a particular shopping engine. So, for example, Google is very particular with things like alcohol, firearms, herbal supplements. So you might want to remove products for a variety of reasons. So let's go ahead and click this Add Exclusion group, and we'll do our first example here. Okay, so this brings up our first exclusion group, and for this one, we're going to make it real simple. We're just going to say for items on Google that are less than $50, we don't want to list them anymore. So the first step in doing that is you'll see here it says exclude items from, and we're going to go ahead and select Google. And you're going to have a number of different options here, one for each of the different search engines or product search engines that we work with. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to select from this list of attributes. And you can see here there's quite a few different things we can work with. The name of the product, the SKU, the price, the brand, the internal product category, as in what you have it in on your site, the Google product category, the description, the MPN, the UPC, and some other things as well. So for this one, we're going to select price because we want to remove products that are less than $50. The next column here is the comparator area, and this is where you're going to choose what you want, how to compare this. And so we're going to say we want to exclude items that are, we're going to choose the less than here, and then we're just going to put 50. So it's really as simple as that for a basic rule. So what we're going to do though is see, okay, did this rule work? So we haven't saved this rule yet. We're just going to check and see, hey, did this actually exclude any items? So the way that you can do that is by clicking over here on the right side under that little magnifying glass that has a little plus box on it, and you'll see it says 16 matches. So that's a very good method to determine whether or not the rule that you've just entered is actually working. So you can see in this case that it is working. So that's great. So it looks good. The only thing that we're going to do here, in addition to what we've already done, is go ahead and click this little label icon. Now, this is not a necessary step, but this allows you to have some, basically just put some notes as to what this rule was about. So we'll just put remove items less than 50 Google. Again, this is not actually used by our software. It's just so that you have a reference point as to what you were doing when you wrote the rule. And then lastly, we'll go ahead and we will click Save Rules. Okay, so now the next time that we do an extraction from your feed, from your website or feed or however we're getting your data, we're going to go ahead and actually implement this rule. So let's try another one. For this one, we're going to say, let's stop listing Nike products on Bing. Maybe you're, have some issue there for whatever reason. You might have prices that are under minimum advertised price, aka MAP, or something along those lines. So again, we'll click this button here, Add Exclusion Group, and this time we're going to select Bing. We're going to select, instead of name here or price, we're going to select brand. We're going to say, and again, the comparator items here is actually a bit different. So because it was a price before, there was less than, greater than, equal to. When it's a actual string like brand, as in a bunch of characters, there's a lot of stuff here. You can say is, contains, does not contain, starts with, etc., etc. The only main thing to note also is that you'll see a lot of these say insensitive. What that means is that it doesn't care what the title of the actual string is. So if there's capital letters, if there's lowercase letters, if you choose the insensitive version, it doesn't look at that at all. So we're going to say is insensitive. So that means that we could spell it like Nike as in all caps, or we could do Nike, or we could do Nike, and it wouldn't matter. They're all going to be the same because when it says insensitive, it's not looking at the capital letters. So let's go ahead and then again, let's check out the preview here. We'll click that. And you can see there's 20 matches. So this feed only has actually 40 items in it, half of which are Reebok, half of which are Nike. So you can see this is working fine. And as just an example, we won't label this one. You don't need to. And again, so this has basically removed all Nike items from the Bing feed. And again, don't forget, you always have to click Save Rules down here, otherwise it won't take. Okay, cool. So we're making progress here. Next, let's try one. There's a special title, a word in the title for some Nike products called Reacts. And let's just say we want to remove those from the feed. So again, we're going to go down here. We're going to click Add Exclusion Group. We're going to select the find. Actually, we'll just go ahead and choose this one. So all engines, as an example, no matter how many engines you have that you're working with, it'll work with all of them. This would be very similar to selecting all three of these, but it's just easier to select all engines. So we'll go ahead and make sure that's highlighted. And then we're going to say, we're going to actually use the name attribute here, and we're going to use the contains comparator. And we're going to use, again, case insensitive. And we're just going to put the word reacts. And this is just a name that Nike has for some of their products. So this allows you to remove, any word that you don't like within a given product title, you could remove in this fashion. In this case, of course, we're going to do the word reacts. And again, let's make sure we preview it. And indeed, there are 2 matches. And we'll go ahead then and save it. So let's back up a little bit then. There's a couple other things you can do. Now that we have 3 different rules in place, let's look at some of these other icons around here. One is that you can pause these. So let's say all of a sudden for this first rule where we're actually removing items from Google that are less than $50, there's a couple choices here if you didn't want this to continue. You could say pause, which will, as you can see, gray out the group, and then you could go down here and click save. Let's do that. Or you could actually click delete as well. I'm not going to delete it, but obviously if you clicked OK here, it would remove the entire rule. So there's 2 ways you can do that if you want to disable or completely remove the rule. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead and try another rule. This one we're going to do what we call a compound rule, and that means we're going to have multiple rules in place to try to remove the item. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to say we want to remove all Nike products that are running shoes. And we call that, again, a compound rule. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and then click Add Exclusion Group to make our new rule. And we're going to select, let's just say, for example, the find. And what we're going to do here is we're going to make a compound rule. So the first thing to do is say brand. And we'll just use is Nike. And let's just go ahead and check that, make sure it's still matching. Great, so we got 20 matches. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is say, I don't want to remove all brands that are Nike. I just want to remove ones that are Nike sandals, or excuse me, Nike running shoes. So what we're going to do here is instead of clicking Add Exclusion Group down here, we're just going to go ahead and click Add Rule. And you'll see we get a double rule now. So this is what we call a compound rule. And you can add as many as you want. So what we're going to say now is that we only want to remove the products that are Nike and are running shoes. So we're going to go ahead and select internal category. And we're going to use the contains, and we're going to use case insensitive. And we're just going to say running. And we'll check it again. Okay, so you can see there's 15 matches there. So what we're going to do now, though, is we're going to actually have to change this right down here. So we're going to change this. This says to match any of the rules. What we really want to do is match all of the rules. So we're going to set this to all. Now that can be a little bit confusing. What I recommend doing is reading it from the top. You'll see exclude items from, and then you choose which shopping engines you're working with. In this case, we chose the find. Then you'll look down a bit, matching, and we've changed it to all of the following rules. And we're setting brand is Nike and internal category has the word running in it. So that's really the definition of a compound rule there. Again, you want to make sure this says all if you're doing a compound rule where both rules need to be true in order to actually do the exclusion. So what you'll notice up here is that once we have this set, you can actually do a preview on the entire rule set that we've created here. So when we scrolled down, when we were working with the individual rules and we had 20 matches here, just do that again, and then we had 15 here. Those are for the individual rules, but of course this is actually a compound bid, or sorry, excuse me, a compound exclusion rule. And so to check this out, what we're going to do is use the exclusion tool that's for the whole group here. So let's go ahead and click that. And you can see it found 5 matches. And that makes sense. It's less than either of these individual rules because it's a combined rule where both have to be true in order for this to work. So at this point, we've successfully removed products from the find that match the following rules. Brand is Nike and the category is running shoes. So we've removed Nike running shoes from the find at this point. So let's go ahead and make it a bit more complicated. We'll add more rules. And as you can see, you can add over and over rules, as many as you want. So what we're going to do now, and this is kind of just random, but we're doing it just as an example, we're going to make the price point between $100 and $200. So not only do we want to have the brand be Nike, the category be running, we also want to now say, okay, only for product prices that are between $100 and $200. So we're going to say price, and you can see we have the choices here. We're going to see greater than 100. And then we're going to select price again, and we're going to say less than, and we're going to say 200. And then let's use the preview up here to check all of these various rules at once and see how many this actually excludes. Okay, and you can see here, there's just one match that excludes because it's a pretty specific rule, obviously. And again, don't forget to save the rule down here. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. Okay, so we're getting a good idea now of how to do some simple rules, which we did initially, and as well as how to do a very relatively difficult compound exclusion rule that we did at the bottom. Let's try something else here. And this is a very common case. Let's say you've got a whole bunch of SKUs that just for whatever reason don't gel with Google. This happens all the time. Or you've got products that you'll see it's just for whatever reason spitting out errors on, and you might not care enough to actually fix the products. You just want them to stop listing on Google. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to select to exclude items from Google in this new exclusion rule. And what we're going to do is we're going to choose the ID here. Customers will often use the ID or they'll use the MPN to do this, and you'll see why in a second. And what we're going to do is leave this as is, ID is, because we're going to set actually here, we're going to set a list of IDs that we want gone. So instead of listing them out in this little small area here, you can click these little green arrows, and that gives you a much broader area to work with. And here's where you can start entering IDs. So we could say ID 1, 5, 10, 20, it doesn't really matter. But obviously these IDs you'll have to know in order to actually enter them here. So let's do a quick check here to make sure this is working. Okay, and as you can see here, once we've clicked this, we'll see 4 matches, which makes sense because we've chosen 4 different IDs. And again, this is a great way to remove bulk amounts of products. You just want to separate the ID or the SKU or the MPN by a space and a comma, and then enter the new one. And this is going to allow you to remove all kinds of products all at once in one fell swoop. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this rule set out. Okay, so what else can we look at here? One thing to keep in mind is that it's really helpful to use the data feeds area, which I'm going to highlight over here when you're doing this. That allows you to look at the actual feeds to see what data you do have in the feeds, and it's going to allow you to enter data in here like IDs, MPNs, categories, etc. that are actually in your feed. So if you're in this area doing exclusions and you're using the preview button and it's not showing you, it's not giving any matches, it's a great idea to come in here, and I'll open up a new tab here. and it's a great idea. You can come in here and you can click search feed, and you can actually look, view feed here, and you can actually look to see what data you have. We have a whole entire other presentation on this, another screencast. If you click on our other videos in YouTube, you'll see that there's an entire video on the data feeds area, which is going to get into detail about searching, so we won't do that here. What I will add though is there is a little button right here, and you'll see when you hover over it, it says View Exclusion Report. That's going to show you all the different products that were removed from the actual feed. So you're going to have to wait. So if you do add a bunch of new exclusions, this exclusion report won't work until we actually run the next extraction. But once we've done that, you can look at this exclusion report and you can see which items were removed. It's very similar though to the previews that we've been doing here inside of the actual exclusion manager. And so on that note, there's one other area that I'll show you up here, and that's called Preview Exclusions. There's quite a few areas in general in this tool. It's actually very, very powerful, so we're just covering the basics. But let's go ahead and click Preview Exclusions. So when you click that, you can see here, it shows you your various feeds, and it's going to give you a bit of information on each of these if you click it, and it's going to basically show you how many products were excluded, how many products were included for each one of them. And so this can be helpful as well. So that's pretty much a wrap. You can always also delete these rules. I think I showed you that previously, and like we said, pause them. And as a final wrap up here, don't forget to always click Save Rules when you're done. Otherwise, you're not actually going to save all the hard work that you just did making these exclusion rules. Okay, and that's a wrap. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, contact us. You can see our contact info on the screen.